All right, welcome back. This is going to be part 119 of my presentation on the flood in Noah's Ark. And guys, we are going to start getting into some of these testimonies. So let's jump right on in and see how far we can get. If you'll notice on the screen here, I've got some information from an article written by the Chicago Tribune. August 1883. And this is what it states. A Constantinople newspaper announces the discovery of Noah's Ark. A Turkish expedition searching for the cause of avalanches on Mount Ararat suddenly found itself in front of a huge carcass in very dark wood emerging from a glacier. When questioned, the neighboring natives answered that they had known for 6 years about the existence of this structure. But they did not dare get too close because they had seen a ferocious-looking ghost peering out of the upper window. The Turks, being courageous people, were not stopped by these stories. They decided to push their investigation further. The position of the wreck, deeply embedded in a gorge, the Ahura Gorge, is what I got a question mark on there for. It seems to be that's probably what it is, of Mount Ararat, made the operation terribly dangerous, and it was only at the cost of unbelievable efforts that they succeeded. The Turks recognized the Ark instantly. It was in good condition, only the sides had suffered. One of the members of the expedition, who spoke English and had probably read the Bible, saw that the Ark was made of the gopher wood mentioned by the Holy Book, which, as everybody knows, only grows in the Euphrates plains. When they went inside the carcass, painted in brown, the visitors were able to see that the Admiralty's rulings concerning the transportation of horses had been respected. The inside was divided into compartments 15 feet high. The Turks could go into 3 of these compartments only, for the corners were full of ice. They could not estimate either how far the Ark stretched under the glacier, but if the whole structure happens to be 300 cubits long, non-believers had better behave themselves. I'm going to start going through some of the sightings and these witnesses that I've been able to get from different sources and stuff. And so one of them is this Jacob, I'm going to try his last name, guys, Chushian, I'm going to say. He lived on the south side of Ararat. The dates of sightings, several visits, were late 1800s and early 1900s, so he took several visits to the site. Details of sighting: a narrow goat trail leads to it. 1/3 of the Ark was sticking out of the snow/ice. It usually is encased in clear ice with the outline of the Ark being visible. The wood was a reddish brown and similar to a houseboat, with a flat deck surface. The Ark is on a cleft or ledge with a large body of water around the portion that is sticking out, about 3 to 4 times the size of the Ark. It is surrounded on the other 3 sides by walls of rock. Now, here's another one, George Hagopian. He lived in the area called Van, which took almost 8 days to walk to reach the mountain. Dates of the sightings were once in 1908 with his uncle when he was 10 years old, and in 1910. Details of the sighting: the year his uncle took him was what they called a smooth year, or no snow year. There's one in about every 20 years. His uncle hoisted him up to some stairs that appeared to have been added by past visitors when the snow was much higher. because the stairs did not reach the ground. The roof was flat and had some light fallen snow on it. When the snow was brushed away, moss could be seen on the wood. There was a large gaping hole in the roof and and a raised area that ran from one end to the other. The raised area had small holes with small intervals in between. His uncle told him they were for air. His uncle shot into the side of the ark, but it did not penetrate it. So his uncle took out a long hunting knife and chipped a piece of wood off the ark and then returned to Van. Colonel Alexander Kor, a Russian expedition 1916 to 1917, was an officer in the Russian White Army in 1915 and was not on the expedition, but he did have knowledge of it. The sighting of the Ark by Russian pilot was 1916. 2 scouts were sent out in 1917. One group had 50 men and the other group had 100 men. Details Colonel Kor gave. The discovery of the Ark by Russian pilot First Lieutenant Zabolotsky was in the end of 1916, with scouting parties being sent out during the summer of 1917 by the commissioning of Tsar Nicholas II. Ark was measured and photographed. He stated that the official records were lost during the Bolshevik Revolution. Lieutenant Leslin admitted he had also heard about the discovery of Noah's Ark, not as a rumor, but as news from the senior adjutant of his division, who told him the Ark was located in the saddle of 2 peaks of Mount Ararat. Housemate of Tsar Nicholas II, Russian expedition 1916 to 1917. Details are given from housemaid's Eva nephew Alvin Hoderbecker. She worked for the Tsar's palace as a housemaid during World War I when she was 19 to 20 years old. Her father was a medical officer for the Russian White Army and was a highly respected friend of the Tsar and his family. He was also the chief medical officer on the expedition that found Noah's Ark. Details given. When her father came back from the expedition, he showed her photographs and reports. The Ark had 3 decks high, and on top of the roof, there was a catwalk that was about knee-high with openings underneath to provide ventilation or light. The Bolsheviks took over, confiscated all the photographs, and killed as many of the men from the expedition as they could find. She was the only one from her family that escaped. Going on, still at the Russian expedition 1916-1917, this is Galina Lashadkina. Her grandfather, Bato Fedor Frolovich, was in the Russian White Army and was on the expedition to the Ark in 1917. Her grandfather was an officer when the Russian pilot saw something that looked like a ship on Ararat. This is the details given. The expedition team had climbed the mountain from 2 sides. The smaller group was comprised of ace climbers and all died in an avalanche. The group her grandfather was with had avalanches too, and people died. Her grandfather told her the Ark was a large ship, but an unusual one, like a huge box with breathing holes at the top. He stated he participated in taking pictures, all possible measurements, samples, and scrapes from the Ark. He also said that walking down Ararat was more difficult than climbing it. Some people had died on the way down. Documents, expedition report, and samples were sent to the Tsar. Once the Bolshevik Revolution began, Her grandfather, never spoke about the expedition in a loud voice and told her never to tell anyone about it. He did have hopes that if he did not live long enough to see a day he could talk openly about it, she could. He also told her, always remember that Noah's Ark is not a myth. I saw and touched it myself. Remember very well, it is on Mount Ararat. Her grandfather died in 1969. Now, as far as this story goes, there seems to be, guys, and what I'm going to do is there is some links in the description below to some articles that were written by Bill CROUSE. Bill CROUSE, that's CROUSE, and Stephen D. Anderson. Now, this was done in December of 2024. One of the articles you can get in PDF form. And in the nutshell, you'll see them below, but it's the geographical and historical concerns in Genesis 8:4 about some of the, they're not questioning the story, guys, in the Bible. What they're doing is they're picking apart these testimonies that these people have been given in the past about Ararat and the ark being on Ararat. One of them being this Russian story. And it seems to be the entire thing was fabricated. Again, I'm just reporting what he has stated. And if you'll notice on the slide here, this is a copy of a letter that he was either given or shown or whatever, or written by this guy named Floyd M. Gurley. Floyd M. Gurley. He now lives in Hawaii. But it says here, I'm not reading the letter here, but right there off to the right, this is what Bill said. Much detective work was done, and the story was traced to a man in California who wrote the story in a very small 25 newsletter magazine. The story, however, was reprinted in tract form. I don't know if he's talking about like little Bible tracts. Those of us, they're like little pamphlets that can have little stories on them that we give them out and we witness to people. Sometimes sometimes I'll leave them in bathrooms. Sometimes you'll see them on gas station pumps, gas pumps. People just give them, or sometimes if they come around your house and you're not home, they'll slip them in your door. But little tracts, most of my Christians know what I'm talking about. But at any rate, the story, however, was reprinted in tract form and literally went around the world several times and still surfaces occasionally. This story is known to be false because CROUSE, this is Bill CROUSE, corresponded with the author, Mr. Floyd M. Gurley, who confessed in a phone conversation and in a letter dated the 21st of June, 1989, which is in CROUSE's possession. And so that must be that letter off to the left is what I'm gathering. That's the reason why I put it on this slide here. That the story had no historical reality. No historical reality. Now, guys, I'm not going to read this whole letter because he goes on to talk about other things other than this Russian story. But he did say there, right there in that block, that square block there that I got in red, this is to me a source of great embarrassment to be constantly denounced for starting the world's greatest hoax about Noah's Ark. And so, again, this is that letter. And so, guys, for what it's worth, this is what I have found about that Russian story. And so if you want to look further, go into the description below. I've got some links that you can go to, and creation.com magazine. I get little emails from time to time with articles and stuff. This was an article. One of the links that you're going to get is one of the articles that I got. And so what I did is I did a little bit more of a deep dive into it, and that's where I got this other information right here that you see before you. But one of the links will send you to a PDF that Bill CROUSE did. And so now he is saying that the ark is at another location. CUDI, we're going to talk about that later on in the presentation in this block. But he is showing all the areas. He is giving all the reasons why the ark is not on Ararat. And so, but he really picks apart a lot of the evidences that is shown for it being on Ararat. And so now I'm going to be talking more about some of those other areas that he shows, but I want to wait till I get to them. I don't want to hit them all at one time. And so, but going on about some of these testimonies, Sergeant Ed Davis, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, date of seeing the ark was 1943. Ed did a favor for a local village, which brought him into favor with the locals. This is the details that he gave. It was in July. The climbing was treacherous. The conditions were horrible. He went with a group of men all tied together with a long rope for safety and was told not to make any loud sounds because of avalanches. They climbed for 3 days. When he was shown the ark, it was in kind of a horseshoe crevasse. Ed had a hard time seeing it at first because everything had the same kind of texture and color. He then saw a huge, at least 100 feet of it was clearly visible, rectangular man-made structure partly covered by a talus of ice and rock, lying on its side. Ed was able to see inside of it. It was broken off. Timbers were sticking out, kind of twisted and gnarled. Water was cascading out from under it. Another piece was shown to Ed that would have matched the first piece. 3 floors were seen, and the guide that brought him said there were living space near the top with 48 rooms. The guide also said there were cages as small as a person's hand and other cages large enough to house a family of elephants. Ed stated that he saw the remains of partitions and walkways. He said when he got back to the base, no one was interested in what he saw and he stopped talking about it. Ed was given a polygraph test in 1989, which took 2 hours. The polygraph expert said, "I can't tell you what mountain Ed was on or where the boat is, or even whether or not it was Noah's Ark. But I can tell you this, he's not lying, and he did see a boat on that mountain." Going on, Lester Walton, U.S. Air Force Corporal, date of seeing the ark between winter months of 1945 and 1946. Lester, along with others, was invited to a theater to watch some black and white footage taken with a new camera at an altitude of about 20,000 feet by a squadron of B-24s, which were on a route from Africa to Eastern Europe. They flew over Mount Ararat and were unaware that they had taken some pictures of Noah's Ark on the north side of the mountain near a large canyon. These were the details given. There was a large box-shaped structure protruding out of ice or rock debris. The north end of the structure was higher than the south end, and the entire thing was tilted about 30 degrees. It was darker than the surrounding rock. At the time, an expeditionary effort was ruled out due to lingering instability of that area. A number of people who saw the footage believed it was Noah's Ark. And that picture right there, guys, that is just a reconstruction of what they saw sticking out of the side there. And so that's what they saw. All right, going on. Gregory Schwinghammer, 428th Tactical Fighter Squadron, based in Adana, Turkey. Date seeing the Ark, late 1950s. Details given. He said he saw the Ark from a F-100 aircraft, and it looked like an enormous boxcar lying in a gully high up on Mount Ararat. He said U-2 pilots in 1956 had photographed it. And so this right here, guys, this picture called the Ararat anomaly is supposedly that photograph. And so, and they've got little areas here detailing what could be, I don't know, timbers or what have you, but it's, of course, it's kind of broken up. And so, again, this is just what I'm not saying that's what they are. I'm just telling you that's what they're saying that this could be. But this is evidently the historical background to how this Ararat anomaly was, this picture came about. All right, going on. J.G. Al Chappelle, U.S. Naval Lieutenant, date of seeing the Ark, 1974, was doing an unlogged mission with a F-4 fitted with cameras that were mounted on the belly and the two wings to check on a possible Soviet-made defense installation or radar station with a tarp over it on Mount Ararat, where the orders came from, which was unknown to them, had received a satellite photo of a foreign object toward the summit of Ararat. The film was turned over to the Air Force and classified as top secret. This is the details given. This is what he says. I am not sure what they did with it, the footage, but I can tell you what I saw with my own eyes. It was a coal black foreign object about 2/3 of the way up the mountain near a gorge. The terrain around it was a brownish long with ice and snow. To me, it certainly looked similar to a boat-like object, definitely man-made. It also appeared as though it did not belong on the mountain. It was just totally out of place. Flying in the plane, the structure appeared to be about 300 feet long until the snow and ice covered it. It was square on the end. There is another ledge with an ice pack 30 to 50 feet below the main structure with a littering of debris underneath the main structure. The end of the upper structure had broken off, and I could see the broken off piece in the snowpack at the bottom of the ledge. And so that is what he's stating. Ralph E. Havens, U.S. Air Force General, date of meeting 1985. Ralph was shown drawings artist Alfred Lee did from eyewitness accounts of Ed Davis and George Hagopian. Details given. This is what he says. We've seen that. We have photos of that. Our pilots have photographed that very object. It looks just like that. It is on a ledge. In fact, I was shown 2 slides of this object at Fort Leavenworth in a presentation for people assigned to Turkey. And so this is just an artist rendition here, but this was the picture that was shown to Ralph Havens, that he said, yes, that is what I saw. We have a picture of that. And so, again, that's what he's stating. Now, guys, going back to this Russian expedition, 1916, 1917, what they had stated, some of these eyewitnesses, is that the door was missing and found nearby partially burned. Some accounts describe a lake of a body of water 3 to 4 times the size of the Ark around a portion of the Ark, a third of it sticking out. Sometimes the Ark was encased in clear ice and the outline of the Ark could be seen. And so, again, even though that I've shared with you about what it possibly could have been all just a hoax, in the details that were given, this is what that was also stated. And the Ark's color was a reddish-brown wood appearance, viewed in the late 1800s and 1900s. The roof had a catwalk that was knee-high and had openings underneath to provide ventilation or light. This is from the Russian expedition, summer of 1917. Like a huge box with breathing holes at the top. And there were cages, some with metalwork, and the Ark's exterior and interior had a wax covering. And so, again, this was reported from that Russian expedition of summer of 2017. Of 1917. And for what it's worth, if the story is legit. But guys, we're going to stop right there. And when we come back, we're going to continue on with some other evidences for the Ark being on Ararat and some of the problems with it. And so, but you guys take care. I love you. And be sure that you check out all those links below, okay? We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.